in life. It depending on everybody learns something where you sort of realize that something big happened to me. That's the ultimate boon, and you have this incredible desire to do something with it. It's either knowledge or it's experience or whatever. And the ultimate boon you have and you feel like this life thing. And then the next stage is typically refusal of the return. You really don't want to come back to the ordinary world because you feel that there is some level of consequence that maybe you can't handle or somebody won't understand, you know?
Or maybe it's too mundane. You'll feel adrift.
Totally, yeah. And this is in the description of the stages. What you just described is part of that description. The next stage, you're coming up back into the ordinary world, and this return is magic flight. And the way it's described in, myths or in real life is you have to escape that extraordinary world and take one more dangerous flight or sneak away, or something is catapulting you to take that ultimate boon and fight against that refusal. You're taking magic flight.
Amazing.
And then there is, it's assistance, I think. Yeah, it's like assistance from a special power or something, which could be your own or somebody else. Right? And then suddenly you're into the last three, which is crossing the return threshold into the ordinary world, master of two worlds, where you finally realize through help and or process where you can hold these two opposing life experiences in place. And then the very last stage, 17, is freedom to live. And when you can, I'm going to give you my little pet theory in a second. When you can work your way through those stages, you can have the freedom to live. What I realized potentially happened to me, just my internal feelings about, my coming in out of the military and back, is if you skip or you don't figure out how to deal with the refusal to return and you just pick, I'm going to call it the next big thing, you catapult yourself into a new cycle and you never finish. And one of two things has happened. You're either two people trapped in the ordinary world or you're one person trapped in two worlds. I don't know which it is. Like, it's either two worlds in one person or it's two people trying to live in one world, but shit gets crazy, right? Because you just haven't done the cycle. And it sounds very mystical, but if you read Here with a Thousand Faces, you're like, this journey is not new. Like, this is thousands of years of very typical human cycle. Now, if we go back to the top of the circle, let me try to scream through the first 10, which will be very obvious for Star Wars fans. Just think about what Luke does. And I'm not like a super Star Wars person. I've seen the movies, but it's a call to adventure. Most of us have a call to adventure of some sort in our life. Refuse the call, help from a mentor, crossing the first threshold, the belly of the whale, which is described as when you first truly separate. This was me leaving for college. When you first truly separate from the ordinary world, road of trials, meeting the goddess, temptations, atonement with the Father, apostasis, which is kind of like dying a death while you're still alive. And then you're into those return stages. And when I first read that book, Andrew, I was like, I'm trapped in the return. I'm trapped somewhere in the return, just emotionally. And one of the places that I was absolutely trapped in the return was I didn't have the mentor to help me cross the threshold. I knew I had to move on in my life. I knew I had learned something extremely valuable. I knew that there was a way through because people across thousands of years of humanity have done it. I don't think I'm special. And I never had the mentor. I got mentors later, a couple years out. And it reminds me that so I got out in the fall of 2011. In the summer, one of my very good friends who lives in Connecticut, he works in New York, he brought me to a lunch at some fancy club in New York with a guy named Buddy Buca, Paul Buddy Buca, who won the Congressional Medal of Honor. He's a West Point grad. He won the CMH in Vietnam. I'd been around a lot of, famous military people. Lunch was very normal. But Buddy was amazing. It was a normal lunch. We didn't talk about much, like impact. We didn't talk about combat action or whatever. There was a green velvet set of stairs. We were leaving the club, the upstairs. We were coming down the green set of stairs. If I remember, Buddy's a little bit shorter than I am. He reached out his left. I was on his left. He reached out his left arm. I was one stair below him. He stopped me. I turned to my right to look at him. He looked at me. He said, "Son, you have it. You know that? You have it. PTS. And you're going to have to deal with it." And we left. I got in a cab and I left. And I remember thinking, you might have it, but I don't. Because that's the old days. Like, we were prepared for this shit. I was still convinced that I'm good. Like, nothing happened to me. Nothing in the military happened to me. That's just normal stuff. And all of our training, it's a story I told myself, all of our training prepared me for that. Like this, the rest of my life is just nothing bad's gonna happen because I'm good, whatever that meant. And when I started to learn more and read more and talk to people who were helping me, I remembered Buddy telling me that. And back to those return stages, Andrew, it's just incredibly important for me to understand that my journey is not special. We are part of a long history of evolution that people who go through very challenging, and the 17 stages in Joseph could not be more accurate to my life, particularly the return.
And of course, if one looked from the outside, they would agree with your mindset then and say, you're alive.
Mm-hmm.
You've certainly done very hard things, extraordinary things. You're married, you got 3 kids, they're thriving. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and things like it, because I don't think any single acronym or diagnosis can capture anything. I think Paul Conti made that very clear to us in the mental health series. These are names by necessity, but
it's a framework that certainly taught me something.
Absolutely, and certainly those who haven't been in the military, maybe had a seed event of something challenging or whatever it is, many people struggle with these kinds of things that live inside them, in their nervous system. They pack it down. Maybe they don't, but that was inside you at that point. Mm-hmm. I think you and I first got acquainted in somewhere around 2016, mm-hmm. when you and some other folks from Tier 1 community and related communities started coming to the lab, and my lab, and I never really talked publicly about my lab, has been involved with various things in Canada and the U.S. Not trying to create any mystique there, but it's not a point of interest what we did, but I recall at that time just thinking, like, this guy's just an amazing team guy. But in any event, we got to know each other a bit, and my sense then was like, it's like that's kind of indestructible, right? And now I realize nobody's indestructible. Yeah. We're flesh and bone, but if we may, let's fast forward a bit to a couple years later. If you're willing to talk about it, maybe talk about some of the evolution that happened. So you started working a job, mm-hmm. You're getting back into civilian life.
Yep.
And I recall a conversation about this time of year, probably about 3 years ago. Yeah. And you had done what a lot of vets from Tier 1 operations have done and are now doing, mm-hmm. which I actually have mostly favorable outlook on, which is now these are, I want to be very clear, legal and sanctioned mm-hmm. explorations of the psychedelic space, right? And I remember you called me and you described the experience that you had had, and some of the connection with warrior culture that had helped emerge for you. So could you explain what happened there?
Probably the entry, Andrew, is as important, meaning it's not all about books, but this is actually another thing I've really learned. I was very intellect and achievement central. And as you can see how easy the emotion comes out, now I kind of very frighteningly understand people who feel stuff a lot more.
It's a whole other landscape.
It's miserable.
Well, wait, yeah, it is, and yet I agree. It's a very
hard.
uncomfortable space, but we'll get there.
It's a journey for me. Let me put it that way.
Sure.
So, there's a bunch of other. I'm a voracious reader. I really enjoy it, and my entree and little window into the world of getting that kind of help came from a lot of different areas. I found in our area a craniosacral therapist who it still seems like, because I mentioned it to people and it sounds fringe to them, it's a very light touch, not even chiropractic-like, and it's closer to myofascial type of massage.
Some tapping.
Yep. Yeah.
Some very light tapping on the top of the head.
The part I actually love the most is the back of the neck, sort of manipulation.
You're lying down, relaxed.
Yeah, you're clothed.
Yeah.
Super easy in terms of that. Couple years of that, just because of athletics. I love massage, and that's kind of my entree. And
so through the body, somatics. Yeah.
Which, frankly, in many ways is my favorite. Back to the physical orientation to the world is what's useful to me. But also, I read Sam Harris's first book, End of Faith, in 2006. And so I've followed him for 15 years religiously, read all of his books, Lying, Moral Landscape. And I don't know him personally, so public stuff notwithstanding, that's not important to me. But waking up, and I took an online course with Robert Wright, who wrote Why Buddhism is True, but that's really not what he's known for, Princeton professor. He's so funny. He's very humorous. And I started to work my way into, I don't have some I don't want people to think I have some whiz bang, spiritual practice that's whatever, but it became very interesting to me, Andrew. I started to realize I needed to find a way to back away from the 24-hour ledge, that super hyper focus. I needed to get a little bit of perspective. One of my favorite short videos is Richard Feynman's Pale Blue Dot. I needed to just back away. That reminds me, thank you so much for talking about time-space bridging, I think, the other day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll cue people to that clip in the caption. It's a way of taking oneself out of one's immediate sphere of vision and literally looking further out into one's environment, and then back again as a perceptual exercise of understanding that as our visual field expands, our perception of time also expands. The binning, the chunking of time.
Yeah. That and your conversation years ago about horizon and activating the parasympathetic system instead of sympathetic, I just very slowly started to realize I needed to back away from the small picture and the reading and the craniosacral and massage, and I was still not really getting consistent real help, but I thought I could do it through educating myself intellectually. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was time to, and it has short-term consequences, but long-term, it's been amazing to, deal with the plant medicines in a controlled and curated environment. And that experience was super safe and quite amazing, actually. The weekend, or the 3 or 4 days, was super intense, but I didn't leave there thinking, again, I kind of thought, I'm good. That was great.
Yeah, couple things. One, we've covered psychedelics on this podcast before. I say this not for liability reasons, but just to emphasize for people's safety, to protect them. Plant medicines are illegal most places still. This is changing. MDMA has been filed with the FDA as a potential treatment. It's not yet legal. These things have great power to heal in the right circumstances, and they also have great potential to harm in the wrong hands or circumstances. People with potential for psychosis, et cetera. But with that said, I remember I was driving, I was on a phone call with you around this time of year, 3 years ago, maybe it was 4, but I think it was 3 years ago. And I said, what was your experience with Ibogaine DMT like? Mm-hmm. And you said, it was among the most profound experiences of my entire life. And I recall you saying that you felt that it had connected you through time to all the warrior cultures that had preceded you, not just the U.S.
Yep.
military, but all warrior cultures. And you sounded great.
Mm-hmm.
You sounded like better than great. You weren't high, but you just sounded like, man, like something had synced up.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this is great, you know, and I hadn't explored plant medicines, at least not in a long time, because I had done them recreationally as a youth, which I do not recommend. It took me down a bad path. And more recently, I've explored them in controlled conditions. But I thought, awesome.
This worked.
You got this new job. You did some very controlled, and again, physician assisted, Ibogaine, DMT experiences, and you're telling me how great everything was.
Yep.
And then I think it was about 3-4 months later, I got a very different call.
Yep.
And if you're willing, you know, I remember that call. Maybe you can tell me about that call.
So I mean,
the
experience, it was incredibly powerful. You know, humor is such a powerful way to get through hard times. That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah.
But it really was, Andrew. I mean, to be fair to thousands of years of, you know, people having experience with these things, we often joked about, like, what poor sucker reached down and grabbed that root for the first time and chewed on it. The iboga tree. Boy, he found out.
Or she.
Or she, yeah.
To be fair.
To be fair, probably, you know, some session that wasn't supposed to go that direction and someone chewed on the wrong root. But it was extremely powerful. I've heard that, you know, the 5-MeO for some people is not much. It's like black. For me, it was just liftoff. And I saw an entirely perfect geometric mosaic in light blue and white. And that was the warrior culture connection. Like, that whole 20-minute ride was just something else. As you know,
I haven't done it, but
noetic is the word.
Noetic.
That people use. It's very difficult. I don't have the language for it. And a couple months later, the bottom dropped out.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that now. Yeah. I also want to emphasize, I know a good number of people that have had the same experience you did with Ibogaine DMT through the Veteran Solutions Group. And I know Marcus and Amber Capone very well. Actually, a bill just got passed in Congress that Dan Crenshaw helped spearhead to bring funding to the use of psychedelics for PTSD treatment in military. And I should mention, because this was interesting to learn, that bill was highly bipartisan. I'm not going to name off the names, because if I do, there's going to be a lot of cringing, screaming, and yelling. But if ever there was a bill that was supported from both sides of the aisle with the most diametrically opposed names who came together around that funding, it's that bill.
Yeah.
And just striking. So there's a very bipartisan thing. So I will say a number of people have been greatly benefited by the Veteran Solutions work. And we can't causally link what happened to you afterwards to that at all. There's a lot of contextual stuff. So we're not doing that, but we're an open book here. And I think that's a great group, by the way. Veteran Solutions is amazing. A few months later, you said the bottom dropped out. So what happened, and when did you start to notice it? And then maybe we can talk about that phone call.
Yeah, I think, looking back, Andrew, I think a couple things. Most people who call me about, friends who say, hey, should I go do this? I initially tell them, well, 100% of the time, I tell them no until you get, I was having this conversation last week with a guy who I'd never met before. You need to stabilize your situation, whatever your situation is, through some very slow, deliberate, Dr. Conti level help. Because in the case of, I'm happy to see that some people are using just a wider spectrum of on-ramp, not the nuclear option to start. can tell you unequivocally, Ibogaine and 5-MeO DMT 2 days apart is the nuclear option. And it's not right for everybody. I'm not a scientist. There's no question. That cannot be right for everybody. That just doesn't make any sense. There's other ways to enter, I believe.
And when you say the Conti option, well, just for those that didn't see the series with Dr. Paul Conti, we'll put a link to it in the show note captions. But what Coleman's referring to is talk therapy with somebody highly skilled.
Yes.
And perhaps also prescription medication if that's necessary, maybe hormone therapy if that's necessary. That's up to the physician, but clearly talk therapy with a skilled clinician.
I believe I don't know what other people need. I needed a mentor to help me contextualize what I was coming from and what I'm going to. And my experience, with the plant medicines was it kicked the door wide open and took that beautiful ice sculpture, perhaps at a person's wedding, and shattered it on the floor. And I was, again, left alone, my fault, not anybody else's, left alone to figure out how to put that ice sculpture back together, piece by piece. And my belief is I could have avoided that by having a much more deliberate process. So when suddenly the ice sculpture was on the ground and every bit of intellect that I built over, however long, 4 decades, I was flat on my back. And as I told you, Andrew, and I've been, really verbal about with so many friends who only want to talk about it in quiet circles, which I totally understand and respect. And if you want to talk about it in a quiet circle, like email the Huberman Live podcast, and you can give them my cell phone number because I know how important it is to people when they're in that stage, that was another thing that I never thought was possible for humans. It was severe depression, severe. And I was so, because I guess I just never thought about it again, or never had a mentor. The shocking thing, Andrew, was how shocked I was. It was like, if I had known something like this was real, not that I would have listened to anybody if they said it, but the most shocking thing was that, again, this could happen to me. And when it did happen, I was completely unequipped to deal with. It took, forget Hell Week, forget every other thing in my life. It took 10,000x the energy of anything I've ever done in my life before to just put my feet on the ground in the morning. I could not PT, I couldn't run, and I could not fucking function. I did function somehow to some level, but it was so terrifying. I just have, for anyone listening who has been through, I just have such incredible respect for people who have dealt with it and have learned to get through something like that.
Depression.
Oh yeah, or pick the title, right? Whatever tough situation someone's in emotionally, I have such tremendous respect for them, because I would have been years ago the guy who just tighten up your boots and get to it. It's not possible. You have to get help from people who care about you, and you have to step back away from the problem set somehow and work through it, step by step. One of the most helpful things, and feel so fortunate that I never really had the chemical dependence thing. It was easy for me to stop drinking.
When did you decide to stop drinking?
It was around 3 years ago or so ish.
Prior to this lapse into depression.
No, right during. Yeah, right during.
You just figured alcohol is a bad thing right now.
Yeah, and I mean, look, you and I have been friends for a while now, Andrew. Some of the things you and I have discussed, and I hear you talk about publicly, they were just good reminders, One of the things I absolutely hate, but I do every day, which is wait 90 minutes to drink coffee. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's the worst. I cannot tell you how much of a difference that's made in my energy throughout the day. And the drinking was similar. Look, I'm just going to drop it for a couple weeks, and then suddenly my sleep's better, my fitness is better. So, we all, even my friend, you chat about stuff. Oh, what are you doing at this age? I'm approaching 50. That helps you stop drinking. Everything else, all the other recommendations come second, at least for me.
Was that pretty easy for you to do? Because I know there's a big culture of drinking in the teams. Yeah.
I was just lucky. So, So my point there is, you know, the respect I have for people who work through stuff like that. And I was going to say, the reason I referenced the drinking is because I started reading a lot about the 12 steps, AA. I've never been to an AA meeting, but the symptoms of PTSD and the 12 steps, I'm like, oh my God, this is me. Like, I need to go through these steps in my own way, not for drinking, but for whatever this low grade, the way I've described it is, you know, the Buddhists obviously call it dukkha, it's unsatisfactoriness, this low grade irritation that I carry around every day. The one amazing thing that couple of months did for me, and the way I describe it visually, is if someone cut me from neck to belly and filleted open my chest and took a propane torch and scorched me from the inside and then put me back together and said, start over. That's how it felt. That's literally how it felt. I mean, I could not believe, Andrew, and you can obviously, you know, Dr. Conti can articulate this better. I couldn't believe how emotional pain could be so physically painful. That whole experience, again, the shocking part was the shocking part. I just didn't think it was real. And so then when it was, and I'm like, how many fucking things do I have to deal with, you know? And I realized everybody deals with a lot of stuff. And it was challenging. And then slowly, you know, it got better and better. And guys like, you know, friends, very close friends, a very, very small, tight group were, man, what people do when you finally tell them and you think, oh, this guy's he's never gonna talk to me again. They do the opposite. They rally immediately for you, you know? And then guys that aren't in your inner circle necessarily helping directly, and they're in the next circle. Because now, this is very weird, it's back to like the feeling thing. I can, not 100% of the time, but a lot of guys in my community, if I speak to them and they're in a bad spot, I can detect it within 5 seconds. Just the tonal and kind of like the tempo. And when you tell that ring of people, not your super inner circle, they dump it immediately. As soon as you open the door, they're like, hey man, I had a couple of tough like months, you know? Boom, they're right in for the most part.
To open up.
Yep. And that really scares me, Andrew, because I know, like if we need to flip the switch this afternoon, like we can flip the switch. Meaning like I can go to old school 15 years ago. That's what you and I have discussed in the past, is kind of come back to, you know, the fighter mentality is the problem with that, the hardcore, intense, focused, that's easy. Like it's so easy to do that tough stuff. That's easy. This is the hard part. And that's what, you know, was so challenging. It was to go to people who normally we do, you know, yeah, let's do this, let's do that, let's do something crazy. And say, okay, well, tell that same person who you've built persona, identity, you know, around them and with them, they're like, you're this guy. And then you have a tough spot. Now you have to go tell them the opposite. Like, I'm really not doing well. It's terrifying.
It is terrifying. And I second with both arms your statement that when we actually open up to somebody trusted, hopefully a friend or somebody close to us, but like some people go to clergy or AA or any number of the different resources. And those resources really are out there at zero cost. They really are there if one has to look a little bit, sometimes a lot, unfortunately, but they're there. My experience has always been, and in observing others, that there's something about the human spirit that wants to help.
Totally.
And sometimes that help comes from somebody who's really been through it. But even if somebody hasn't been through it, there's something in our nervous system that sees real pain in somebody. And contrary to what we think, they don't judge and think that everything that the person who's hurting was before was a fraud. The contrary, they see it as an act of strength. Mm-hmm. But it feels like hell to reveal that. And I totally agree. I think all the tough stuff, all the anything physical is like a fraction of the emotional pain. And I thank you for highlighting the physical aspect of emotional pain, especially if one isn't accustomed to it. Yep. If one isn't accustomed to it. If you're willing, how bad did it get? I mean, the call we had suggested it was bad. I sometimes refer to a line, and I'd be lying if I didn't admit that I've seen that line a few times in my life. I've been right up next to it a few times. And now if I ever see it, I know to do many things when it first comes into my visual sphere. The line, of course, being the point at which one is considering taking their own life. Yeah. Something that happens far too often, even once is far too often. And we've sort of skirted around this topic. After all the wartime stuff and the gunfights and people dying and the doorbells, there have been a lot of friends of yours, and some of whom I know, but most of whom I don't, but
to this year,
who continue to kill themselves, to put it bluntly. Where were you at with respect to that line? Because depression is one thing. There's mild depression, there's severe depression, there's recurring depression, there's manic depression, and on and on and on. But ultimately, that's the thing that hopefully everyone's seeking to avoid. And it's how close were you?
I would say there was probably, I really want to say one day. And the truth is it was one day.
It lasted one day.
Being that close to the line.
But it only takes a moment to go.
That's the scary thing, right? And it probably lasted a couple of weeks, but there was only, back to the buds thing, like I never thought about quitting. I thought about it one day.
What was the thought?
It was, I mean, sort of like the classic symptoms, Andrew. I was up all night sweating and shaking, and it's back to the shock of it. It was, okay, I actually was able to, like, one of two things is happening. Either I am fundamentally bad. There's no way you can feel this bad and be good. So one of two things is happening. Like, I'm just bad, a bad person, which I know is not true, or something bad got inside of me that I have to get rid of, and I don't know how to get rid of it. And so sweating, shaking, up at 3 a.m. and legitimately thinking, this is just the scariest thing, and for anybody in the situation, you think with every ounce of your being that people are better off without you. And then somehow, thankfully through chemistry, neurobiology, past learnings, I stepped back away from that very quickly. But the feeling of putting me up to that line didn't go away. I just intellectually was able to, it was kind of where the maladaptive behaviors, back to training, work in your favor, which is I'm not quitting. Like, this can't be just me, even though it did feel like just you. I mean, you suddenly become the core of the entire existence of the universe. You think like you're it, but in the negative side of it, not the adaptive side of it, because the pain is just so extreme. And but I was able to back away from it. And then I'm so grateful to so many of my friends. I can't imagine how many hours, if we collect up those hours, how much time I spent with them on the phone. And one of my, in those really hard weeks, maybe a little bit after that, Andrew, one of my buddies, I was actually just talking to him yesterday because I had time in the car. The tough love side of it, when you're feeling that poorly, is a little tricky. Like, I probably wouldn't deliver tough love unless I really thought the person could handle it. I think you got to really deal with kid gloves at those moments. But one of my buddies told me, if you do something to hurt yourself, you will have proven to every person who knows you that you are a fucking liar and a fraud. Everything you've been about your whole life is a fraud. And Andrew, we were on the phone. I was like, whoa, my God. He just went 10 ring. I mean, dead center. And that was a pivot. Like, that really helped me a lot.
So that's what you needed. I mean, I don't know that that's what I would have needed. I recall when we spoke, because I obviously not professionally trained in any of that. I just remember thinking, how do I put in this into language that Coleman's going to understand? And I just said, you know, I think your goggles are. I know one thing for sure, which is that your goggles are foggy. So you got to. Right. So you have to outsource your decisions now.
I think you might have also told me to outsource my identity.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped a lot because it was that idea of you have foggy goggles. You're clearly like not on stable ground. Everything you believe about yourself, just let it be the spokes of a wheel that somebody else can hold for you for a period of time. I was like, well, I can do that. And then my other buddy, I didn't want to be a liar and a fraud. I was like, I can do that. And
yeah, and I mean, I'm grateful for the opportunity, but you know, unfortunately, I had a few circumstances where people close to me were at that edge, and I'd be lying if I didn't say I've been at that edge. So I knew I had some sense of where you were at. And under those conditions, I don't think there's a playbook. I mean, obviously, when people have a plan and they're thinking about implementing that plan, those people need to be put under protection from themselves.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it didn't come to that.
Yeah. And you know, a few friends just did the basics, Andrew, which was, I really wanted to talk to you at that time because I knew you would give me some advice. You know, I was so uncertain about I'll just say the chemistry, but the chemistry and like something is not right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know, different friends offered different, and some friends just sat and listened to it all.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think back, it's like, I would take a bullet for them because they just took it, you know, and let me offload it. It's an amazing experience for let people help you, which I was never willing to do. No,
and you were. We have to highlight something that might have been overlooked earlier because we went through it quickly, but that you were commander of a unit, so you're head of a family. I know Bridget's also head of family. There's a trade. You go back and forth, right? Exactly. But you're used to leading and protecting others, and I think it's awesome that you're able to have access that raising your hand and asking for help.
You have to.
It's such a sign of strength and skill, and it feels like the exact opposite in the moment. The exact opposite. And then we go to these narratives like, oh, if I've ever done that in the past, people didn't help. That, you know, we come up with a million excuses, but in the end, it's such a thing of strength to do that. So you did ratchet yourself out of that very, very dark hole.
Slowly.
And I want to place this in the context of this hero's journey. Would you see that? You talk about the magic flight, that you're against, you're like the refusal. Mm-hmm. You won't go back. But so it was accepting, it seems, that that some pieces of you needed work.
Yeah. That
there was this PTSD, this gentleman that you mentioned saw that. And you refused to kind of deal with it. And so shine a light on it. And God, the universe, whatever your beliefs are, forced you to see it.
Yep.
And you went to the very bottom, but not out the bottom.
Yep.
What was the process of putting things back together?
I mean, really, a lot of it, Andrew, was cutting out. So as a practical matter, I'm going to go back to regular therapy because my therapist is amazing. So
at what point did you enter quote unquote talk therapy?
Immediately then.
So you got a quote unquote therapist.
Because, yeah. I mean, effectively, you know, and Bridget and I at some point, it was Bridget was like, this is it, like full-time help, effective immediately. And I knew it was necessary, but if I'm really honest, like I would have avoided it. I would have somehow like tried to gut through the situation without like full-time help. And I mean, once a week therapy. Yeah.
So the idea of sitting down with somebody and talking about past, present, and maybe some ideas of future was worse to you than jumping out of a plane at 30,000 feet or going into a gunfight?
Not even close. Not even close. And
hearing yourself say that, dude, you realize how
ridiculous.
How untrue that must be at the physical level, but the nervous system doesn't know. As to quote Dr. Paul Conti, the limbic system that experiences or creates this sense of fear and dread doesn't know the clock or the calendar. If you experience that, there's the idea that it's going to go on forever. I think that's the fear.
That's correct. Yep, that's exactly right. Thank you for saying that. The fear was, this will go on forever. But so yes, I just did not want to, back to Bessel van der Kolk's. When I read this word in his book, Body Keeps the Score, alexithymia, if that's a real thing, where you can't put language to, what's going on. I didn't want to put language to it. I couldn't. I just didn't feel like it. Like I just felt like gutting through it. And then I got, once a week therapy, amazing people. And I don't know, Andrew, the first 3 months was, gutting through. I couldn't seem to shed that emotional burden of pick the category of stuff from the last, let's just say 20 years. It was just, but it was all, I couldn't stop it from coming out. And obviously that's a good thing. And so that just continued, and every day and when I say, this is the tough part for at least me, and I know a lot of guys like me, the gains are minuscule, but things improved slowly but surely.
Were there ever moments where you felt you were drifting backward?
Not really. And that was nice, You see that, there's some stall, plateaus.
You don't have to share this, but because I'm a believer that talk therapy can be very effective. Certainly that's been my experience. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for two in particular amazing people who really helped me along the way, but in that way. But I do think there's a place at times for pharmacology to assist the process.
Sure.
I know nowadays people hear SSRIs and they demonize those. That wasn't, I'll come clean. So, and then maybe if you feel like it, you can, I hit a bout of depression during my postdoc, did a short run of Wellbutrin, bupropion, which is more of the dopaminergic, noradrenergic agonism, mostly adrenaline, noradrenergic. Okay. It really helped. It nuked my memory at the dosage they suggested, which meant I had to take a very low dose. And then eventually I came off. And I think that's one thing I learned from Conti, which is that most of these medications were designed to help people get over a bump as opposed to be taken continuously. Some people need to take them continuously. I have been able to be away from that for a long time, but I think pharmacology can help.
Oh yeah. I think I'd have to go back and look. 4 months maybe of pretty low dose of Wellbutrin.
I mean,
thanks to
okay, that sounds that's about right.
Yeah, thanks to my buddy Jimmy. I called him and asked him what he thought, and he said, "Well, you use a gun sight on your weapon, don't you? And you use glasses if you can't see. No, I need reading glasses. You need glasses if you can't see, right? It's like, just fucking take the Wellbutrin, man. Chill. Like, just get some space. Back to the space-time bridging concept. Just get back away from the danger for a few months. That really helped.
And that's very different than the backing away from the danger with, say, alcohol or drugs. And look, my stance on cannabis is some people can use it safely. Most people probably cannot, but some can. Yep. But there's something different about the drugs that have a addiction potential or the drugs that disrupt sleep. Like ultimately, if you look at people who commit suicide, and I've spent a lot of time with this literature, in almost every case in the preceding weeks, there's a disruption in sleep schedules, meaning disrupted from what they were doing prior to that when they were not feeling suicidal. Yeah. So then you think about alcohol disruption of sleep, even if you think you're sleeping. And there's a story, like a common theme starts to emerge. So you stabilize sleep, you were getting some dopamine and noradrenergic assistance from the low dose Wellbutrin, and you're basically also just
offloading.
You're just letting it all out with a therapist.
With a therapist, and the thing that strikes me as, to your point about my resistance to the therapy versus jumping out of airplanes or whatever, the most important people in my whole life since day one have been people that have helped me. Coaches, parents, friends, boom, Doug, work colleagues, the guys that I work for now. Like you have all these people helping you, and then you hit this thing that's so unusual. I'm like, I don't want anybody to help me, and I don't want to tell anybody about it. It's like, what is that, Andrew? It's like, what is that? And it's not like I wasn't in these environments where I've been coached and mentored. Like, I've had coaches and mentors on my ass my whole fucking life. Like instructors, it's a nonstop. And I don't know. I just couldn't do it until I did it. And it's been a process since, and I'm super grateful for it. And I don't know where we are in the journey, but in terms of like the hero's journey, but I hope I'm at freedom to live some version of it, because with my this is dangerous because I only say this like with my really, really, really close friends. I know this is going to more people in my close. I feel like a completely different person. And none of that stuff really ever goes away. It's all a process, right? And I'm never going to stop the process, but I don't even recognize myself in some ways anymore. And that's been a good thing, because in those times when I was just on the 24-hour horizon sometimes, I just did not know what the fuck was going on other than exactly what I was doing, And it's just an odd experience to be in a different place. And it's scary to know that without that experience and without people really kind of forcing me to get help and things forcing me, I might be doing the same stuff, which is a hard way to live,
Or worse.
Worse.
You might not be here.
Or worse, which has happened to many of our buddies, and I want to go like retroactively hug them and collect them up in like a net and say, guys, just stop for a second. It doesn't have to go there.
Yeah, I feel the yearning in that statement. I suffer from a terrible, very destructive, debilitating desire to travel back in time and fix things. It's like I know I don't have my graduate advisor, who unfortunately all three of my graduate advisors are dead, but she used to say, my time machine's broken.
Yeah.
Anytime I'd raise something, the coulda, woulda, shoulda, my time machine's broken, and we know that. But I felt that statement in every cell of my body. It's clear you would. But you're also, in sharing this experience and this information, you're doing that now in what we call in biology in the interrograde fashion. And many people are going to hear this and cue to the recognition of what's happening to them, hopefully before they get to that line.
Yeah, you have to, and you just got to tell somebody. It's like, it's crazy how simple that is, Andrew. I mean, months. It's like, I can't tell anybody.
Well, and maybe we drill into this a little bit deeper, because I think that this really speaks to the global experience of being human, where unlike a physical wound, where, if you see bone exposed, you're like, this is pretty serious. We all have different thresholds for what we can tolerate in terms of pain and seeing ourselves wounded. We all don't have to decide what's the difference between hurting and injured. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to psychological stuff, we don't know. We also are dealing with a world now where some people feel psychologically injured by everything, so that's the extreme there. But I think what comes through, and I think people need to perhaps highlight in their minds, is when something's kind of nagging or scratching at you beneath the surface, that voice, what do you think that voice is?
I call it the low-grade pain. Okay, for me, there was a low-grade, just slight hot burning starting in 2007. Probably before that, but for me, it was a weird mix, Andrew, of like an uncertainty, a seeking, this just doesn't feel right. Like, it has to be fixed. There has to be an intellectual and achievement way to sort of get around, this is where the Buddhist writing and thinking really helped me a lot. There has to be a way around this low-grade unsatisfactoriness somehow. My sense for me, and I'm obviously not, the Dr. Conti in the room, just because of all the things I've learned and how it just had to be this constant, I'll use the word trauma, but for me it was like something had to happen to our system. Obviously it does. Something happens to our system that is a little bit of there's a shock there. Boom. And then a buddy gets killed, and then it's not even always with death. Then you have extreme firefight or, close call. And then it's just boom, boom, shock, 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 shock. It's almost like getting TBI for the nervous system. It's just a constant high. To me, it always felt like that constant high end. Now, if you keep going, perhaps, if you never recognize any of it and you just keep jacking the dopamine and the adrenaline your whole life, maybe you can just never recognize it. But for me, when I shut the engine off and I decided it's not really how I wanted to live, and I was trying to work out of that low grade, whatever residue that I was left with, it was like every time I came from home from deployment, I would get sick that night. Like I would have a fever that night, headache and fever. And I tend to get sick at the end of the year. Last 2 years, it was Christmas. This year, it was Thanksgiving. And, Bridget and I always joke about it. It's because I slightly turned the engine down a little. And then the immune system.
Yeah, that's the way it works. Everyone thinks stress depletes the immune system, and indeed it can.
Yeah.
But if you think about it in evolutionary adaptive, ways, go allows you to stave off the infection, or at least to not have the symptoms of combating infection. And then when you relax a little bit, go on vacation, boom, you get sick. Which is not to say constantly stress, but you need to modulate.
Right.
You got to modulate. But when you're on deployments, you don't have the option.
No, you don't.
You're in gunfights every day.
Yeah. So as soon as you turn it off, you get sick, right? But for me, in this particular instance, what do I think it is? I think it was all of those experiences at once, turning the generator all the way off, or the electric panel fully off, and then it just all came out.
Well, for people or anyone listening who is facing that feeling, that underlying feeling, or who is challenged with like a breakup, loss of a loved one, fear about the future, languishing because they don't know what the future holds, or the feeling that, quote unquote, so much has happened, or some combination of those 5 things, where do you think the healing process starts?
I hope, again, back to the hero's journey, I hope for every single person that it's not a rock bottom moment. But it seems like if you follow enough people and you hear enough stories, you've talked with Dax, right?
Dax Shepard. Yeah.
He talks about it nonstop. Like, unfortunately, I think a version of bottom is where the process starts. All the people I know, the stories they tell me, the process started when they hit some version of bottom. What's the quote that I love is, you don't change until the pain of staying the same is worse than the pain of change.
Yeah, amen to that. I have experienced that more times than I would like to admit. And that brings me actually to this more macroscopic question. My understanding of the hero's journey, from obviously I haven't read or listened to the book, is that we don't complete this cycle and then rest at the ordinary world where we are living in bliss and peace forever. We actually have to go around that wheel over and over and over again, hopefully not going to bottoms that put our lives in danger, but it is not a process in which we ever really get to cruise. So let's orient Coleman Ruiz in that cycle. You seem to have returned to the ordinary world. For those listening and not watching, whenever you describe the feeling of getting through, but also that people assisted you, you smile.
Mm-hmm.
as friendly a guy as you are, I think in the first 3 years I knew you, I didn't see you smile once.
That's probably true.
I didn't see you smile once. I just thought like, man, these like tier 1 team guys, they're serious.
They're locked in.
They're locked in. But you smile a lot now.
Yeah.
So I think you're back in the ordinary world. What are the things you're watchful for? Like you're not drinking, you pay attention to your sleep. You always trained, you always did it. You call it PT, but physical training.
Yeah, I train pretty
cycle, run.
Swim, lots of kettlebells.
Yeah. Every morning?
I train probably 5 out of 7 days, and the 2 days that I don't train, I have a sauna at my house. I'm in the sauna at least for an hour.
It's so funny how team guys talk about getting into cold or getting in the sauna like it's just a regular thing. Like they never post it to social media. For them, it's just it's part of the routine.
Yeah.
But I say that because I think a lot of people think it's like this esoteric biohacking thing. Wrestlers and people in the military are accustomed to like sauna cold, just like cardio lifting weights. It's not this esoteric thing.
No. I mean, I think on average there's a sauna in Finland for like every single person in the country. Right. So we didn't invent some amazing recovery process by doing sauna.
Right. What do you think? What do you think it is about physical movement that helps the mind? Obviously, it's not. I consider it necessary, but not sufficient. Like you need to do the talk therapy, the working through, the writing, the reading, the introspection, the talking to other people, maybe pharmacology, but it does seem to be so important for resetting us. What do you think it is about physical movement?
I mean, since it might go back to John Rady's little anecdote in Spark, the sea squirt, I guess, swims around, and then as soon as it does whatever it needs to do, it just dies when it stops moving.
Oh yeah, so the sea squirt is this aquatic animal, aplysia, as it were, that when it lands on a rock and stops moving, it actually digests its own nervous system. That movement is the great Nobel Prize-winning scientist Sherrington that said that movement is the final common pathway, that movement is the way that the nervous system tells the brain and rest of nervous system that it's still needed here on Earth. Which I like. It's like it reminds us of our own utility. Yeah. In a neural way.
I mean, whatever that is, and you're right, the chemistry and the neurobiology of it all. This goes back, again, going back to 7th grade. I was at the end of the rope on the detentions and the suspension, and I have this very clear memory that before my dad got home, like I ran laps, I don't know how many, but a lot, around the block. And by the time he got home, I was like, whatever my punishment is, I'm good. Like, I'm not worried about it. That physical activity for me all the time, I don't want to overdo the runner's high thing, but whatever that is, that's what I think it is. Like when I'm in motion or my heart rate's up, for the most part, everything's fine. And I'm clear-headed, and I cannot be, again, dropping and drinking. I can't be lethargic and sit around. Like I have to, take care of myself in that regard. I watch my sleep super close. If it gets past 10:30, I'm in like a full-blown panic. I need to get to a pillow. The basics. Like I don't do anything crazy, really.
You eat what you want.
No. I would say on the neurotic scale of things, that's probably my most extreme. There's probably a little bit of cutting weight, kind of like eating disorder issues if I was guessing. Not that extreme.
So you eat meat, vegetables?
Yeah. Okay. But I'm a really light eater. I eat like a bird and probably 8 times a day, maybe more.
8 times a day?
Oh, easily. I'll have, thanks to you, I'll wait an hour and a half to have coffee, which is miserable.
You're welcome.
But it's amazing. Thank you. It's helped me so much.
Well, I take some shit for it because some people say, do I have to? Well, if I train first thing, then I'll have my coffee first thing. It was really to stave off the afternoon crash. But a lot of people find that experiencing that natural wake up, and look, it's 90 minutes. It's not like cutting out for 2 days or 2 weeks. Or Michael Pollan, I think, quit coffee. And I was like, why in the world would you do that?
Quit coffee?
Yeah, why in the world? I love coffee, love yerba mate, always have from first sip. Which, by the way, I had my first gourd of mate, caffeinated mate, when I was 4. There's a picture of me in my grandfather's lap.
That's hilarious.
Argentine side, yeah. So, but the point here is that, these practices, these things, I think that they involve a little bit of discipline, but they really can have an outsized effect, I think.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, the eating thing, and then maybe, one more mental thing in this regard. I'll probably have maybe an avocado in the morning, and then 2 hours later, maybe 1 hour later, I'll have sliced cheese and an apple, and then
Being the signal among all the noise.
Well, speak for yourself of being long-winded, because I'm not. But honestly, I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. I recognize how valuable your platform is and how many people want to be on it, and the fact that I've been asked to come on again, I really appreciate it. And to be able to have the opportunity to disseminate this information and not just talk about the studies, but talk about, hey, here's a method of thinking. Here's a way to approach this stuff. And I mean, you kind of pointed out, like, I would love to be able to say, yeah, seed oils are bad. Like, I'd love to give you that answer. But I can't do it. I can't make myself do it because I look at the evidence. And I'm glad you said spirited. I do feel like I do have some fighting spirit, but at the end of the day, I tell people, I'm human. I've got my own biases, my own beliefs, and I like making money like anybody. But I like to be right. But at the end of the day, I want to help. And I believe that if I continue to execute on that mission, that, financial stuff will take care of itself. And at the end of the day, I just want to be a net positive on the world. So thank you for giving me that chance.
Oh, it's been a true pleasure, and you're absolutely more than net positive on the world. And we'll just have to have you come back and talk to us again before long. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for today's discussion with Dr. Layne Norton. To learn more about his work, please see the links in our show note captions. If you're learning from and or enjoying this podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's a terrific zero-cost way to support us. In addition, please be sure to follow the podcast on both Spotify and Apple. And on both Spotify and Apple, you can leave us up to a 5-star review. Please also check out the sponsors mentioned at the beginning and throughout today's episode. That's the best way to support this podcast. If you have questions for me or comments about the podcast, or guests or topics that you'd like me to consider for the Huberman Lab podcast, please put those in the comment section on YouTube. I do read all the comments. For those of you that haven't heard, I have a new book coming out. It's my very first book. It's entitled Protocols, an Operating Manual for the Human Body. This is a book that I've been working on for more than 5 years, and that's based on more than 30 years of research and experience. And it covers protocols for everything from sleep to exercise, to stress control, protocols related to focus and motivation. And of course, I provide the scientific substantiation for the protocols that are included. The book is now available by pre-sale at protocolsbook.com. There you can find links to various vendors. You can pick the one that you like best. Again, the book is called Protocols, an Operating Manual for the Human Body. If you're not already following me on social media, I am Huberman Lab on all social media platforms. So that's Instagram, Twitter, now known as X, Threads, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And on all those platforms, I discuss science and science-related tools, some of which overlap with the contents of the Huberman Lab podcast, but much of which is distinct from the contents of the Huberman Lab podcast. Again, that's Huberman Lab on all social media platforms. If you haven't already subscribed to our Neural Network newsletter, our Neural Network newsletter is a zero-cost monthly newsletter that includes what we call protocols, which are brief 1 to 3 page PDFs that cover things such as neuroplasticity and learning, dopamine optimization, how to get better sleep, things like deliberate cold exposure. We have a foundational fitness protocol. We have a protocol all about habit forming and much more. To sign up, again, at completely zero cost, you simply go to hubermanlab.com, go to the menu function in the corner, scroll down to newsletter, and you provide your email. I should point out that we do not share your email with anybody. Thank you for joining me for today's discussion with Dr. Layne Norton. And last, but certainly not least, thank you for your interest in science.